Great. Then I will call to order the Pickering School Building Committee. Roll call, please.
Mayor Nicholson,
Present.
Brian Castellanos. I believe he's here. Deb Ruggiero,
Present.
Dr. Alvarez, Diana Charcutis, Flory Makua. Oh, one more. That's Flory coming in right now. Jessica Gerardo, Jim Ridley,
Present.
John Ford, Joe Smart,
Present.
Karen Miller,
Present.
Kevin Ritterhouse,
Present.
Lauren Drago, Michael Bertino, Michael Donovan,
Present.
Molly Cohen, Peter Kolakidis,
Present.
Rich Marlin,
Present.
Rick Starbird,
Present.
Tom Mannion,
Present.
Mayor McGee,
Present.
Wayne Losey. I don't see him. Okay, that's it. Okay, thank you, everybody. To get started, Jean, I'm going to give you the host since you'll need it for most of the presentation. So
Great, thank you. All right. Here we go. So Lynn, just tell me when you want me to flip a slide.
okay, next slide.
Already?
Already. Unless everybody wants to look at the beautiful picture of the Pickering. But so we're going to go through some administrative actions, give you some update on a few things, and then Jean will take you through the schematic design progress update, and we're going to talk a little bit about our Article 97 update on Magnolia Park. And then we'll round it off by running through the SBC meeting schedule. We have a couple of changes and a couple of public forums to add to the agenda. So, I mean, to the project schedule. Next, Jean.
Sorry, give me a sec. There we go.
First up is approval of the June 14th, 2023 SBC meeting minutes.
Well, the committee,
Motion approved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Just wanted to note that Brian Castellanos is now with us, as well as Flory. He was joining when I called his name earlier. So next. So just a quick update on the project budget. We have committed 90% of the feasibility study and schematic design budget, and to date we've spent 70%, and we are at about 75% complete with the overall phase of the project. Next slide. We have been tracking pretty consistently below our projections for cash flow. However, that cash flow will pick up in the next couple of months as we will be entering amendment number 6 for RDA for some of the due diligence consultants that we have analyzing the site. So at that point, probably in the next week or so, we'll be 100% committed on the budget, and we'll end up expending all of the feasibility study budget within the next couple of months. Next. So this is a requirement of MSBA. Any budget revisions that have to occur, it takes a vote of the school building committee. It's just basically a vote of acknowledgement. But we did make some revisions to the budget. We haven't exceeded or gone outside of the overall budget, but we did move some monies from one budget line to the next. And with budget revision request number 4, what we did was we moved some monies into the left field budget to pay for the translation and interpreter services for the PSR public forum phase. And then we also moved some money out of our the left field budget line to pay for the construction manager, so that we'd have enough funds to pay for them for this next exercise that they're going to be hopefully joining us in estimating the project. So
You need a motion?
I do.
All right.
I just have a quick question before we make that motion.
Yeah, so just Rich was recognized. He can make a motion. We can second it. We can still do questions after that.
Okay.
Yep. So there's a motion on the floor. Any second?
Second the motion.
All right. Any discussion? Flory?
Yes, just for Gene, just wonder why is it that if we're still in the design phase, why are we seeing design changes that's causing the city additional money?
It's not design changes, Flory, it's additional consultant fees. Like, we spent a lot of time. One example is doing borings and test fits down on Magnolia. Then we moved the area, we moved the footprint of the building. So
Right.
we're kind of repeating that. And, those folks have additional services to do the new borings and test fits in the new location as one example. I'm not sure all the other things that are in this budget request, but things pop up and we need a new survey or we need some more due diligence just so we can make sure the schematic design budget is proper. I don't know, Lynn, if you have anything to clarify beyond that.
Right. This was additional work we thought was necessary to do after our first round of, as Gene said, borings and hazmat testing and surveying. And that happens sometimes where we need more information in order to be able to put together a realistic or feel comfortable with the budget that we put forward.
But it's not coming out from a design contingency right now. It's not.
It's coming out of the feasibility study budget, and we did have a contingency for the feasibility study and schematic design phase of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Nicholson,
Yes.
Brian Castellanos,
Yes.
Deb Ruggiero,
Yes.
Dr. Alvarez, Diana Charcutis, Flory Makua,
Yes.
Jessica Gerardo, Jim Ridley,
Yes.
John Ford, Joe Smart,
Yes.
Karen Miller,
Yes.
Kevin Ritterhouse,
Yes.
Lauren Drago, Lorraine Gately, Michael Bertino, Michael Donovan,
Yes.
Molly Cohen, Peter Koulikides,
Yes.
Rich Marlin,
Yes.
Rick Starboard,
Yes.
Tom Mannion,
Yes.
Mayor McGee,
Yes.
Wayne Lozey. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Okay, next. I'm going to let Tim talk about this slide, but we did sign our project team up for a series of webinars that the federal government is putting on, and we just wanted to give you a little bit of update on that. Tim?
Yeah, so basically, one of the things during the CM process that Rich Marlin really highlighted was, and previously too, that there's a lot of money available to municipalities through the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed, I believe, last year. Basically, the industry is still trying to digest the amount of information, but they've started to come out with a series of webinars to try to inform and help people kind of wade through, since there's so much information as a part of this act. So basically, I took they've had one seminar so far. There's 4 in total. They will complete by August. We've kind of distributed to a core group just some of the existing materials and presentations and the recording of the first seminar. And if anyone else in the rest of the committee wants it, they can just email me separately and I'll send them a link. Basically, one of the major takeaways from this is that this law basically changed and added something that hasn't been possible before, which is direct pay for tax exempt entities through the IRS. So we know that that is available. We're still trying to figure out exactly how you're able to, as a municipality, claim rebates and tax credits when you don't pay taxes. So one of the things we're going to be looking at is probably advising the city to look into the idea of hiring some sort of tax advisor or tax attorney. Not necessarily just for this project. The Inflation Reduction Act has a lot of funding for even current operations of schools, not just construction. But we're mostly dealing with the fact that you can get up to 30 and in some cases, Lynn, 60% on projects. And when they mean projects, they mean like on the mechanical systems. Like they take individual trades and they break it down as projects. So like if you were doing a boiler replacement, you could get up 30 to 60% depending on what they end up deciding. I'm not really sure, again, how they decide which percentage you get. I will say they do highlight that that districts with higher rates of maybe poverty or disadvantaged population, and especially urban districts, are kind of pushed to the front of the line for these grants over wealthier districts. They make that pretty clear in it. So I'm kind of giving you some of the information. Like I said, exact technical step-by-step how this works, we're still investigating, but we wanted to bring it to your attention. Because we still haven't finalized it, but there's a way we could potentially add geothermal at no to little cost for the project, based on some of the grants that are available. So this is not something we're going to leave here at this meeting. We're going to come back to it a few more times in the future.
Rich?
So I was at a Zoom call this morning and somebody on the call said the Clean Energy Center is apparently getting about $8 billion from the federal government. And that will pay for things such as heat pumps if we decided to use heat pumps instead of geothermal, because it just doesn't work, but they're direct grants. So we may want to check over there and kind of see what the process is for applying, because obviously that can make a determination to which one of the various heating systems we use. So I had not heard that one before today. So
I mean, Lynn and I kind of did a quick rough thing, and it could be a couple million dollars that could be contributed to this project through the grants. So it's not insignificant. But like I said, we'll be talking further with the city on the tax advisor, because the way you get the money is you have to fill out a ton of IRS forms, and that's kind of not in my realm of expertise. So
Next slide, Gene.
Looks like Mayor McGee has had his hand raised. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks. This is great news. To follow up, I would want to maybe the mayor knows this, whether or not we have anybody in place financially or on the tax side, or a financial advisor in the city that's worked through the opera money and could be jumping into this more quickly than considering that all of the challenges we're facing on funding this. I think being proactive from my perspective is the way to go. And I know Rich has been on top of this from the beginning. So I don't know if we have someone on, Mayor Nicholson, whether we have someone that we're already using for other purposes, or whether we explore this more quickly to take advantage of on the potential dollars. Seems like the dollars are becoming more real. So just seems we should be on top of this more quickly. So I just throw that out there. I don't know if you want to
Yeah.
speak to that, Mayor Nicholson.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll certainly review the capabilities of our existing staff and vendors. Obviously we have legal and financial experts that we hire for various purposes, and as well as some capabilities in-house. We also have vendors that we've been using on American Rescue Plan Act funds. So, we'll review all those existing relationships. I think it's possible that these capabilities will be deemed to be incremental to what we've already retained. But we'll certainly review all those possibilities.
Thank you. Next, Jean. This was just some of the various opportunities under this program. And the whole point was to help prioritize disadvantaged communities, as well as to ensure that we are using labor that under the prevailing wage rate or Davis-Bacon Act, and that we buy American, the domestic content piece of it. These are a few of the programs that are under this umbrella, but I also learned today from the MSBA actually of a couple more, the ITC and the capital skills grants that they felt we could get some contributions from. So we'll look into those as well. Next, Jean. One good thing I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention at the June 21st, 2023 meeting of the MSBA board, they voted to ensure that any rebates, grants, or any other third-party sources of project income would not hurt the project in that MSBA would not lower the project cost basis or reduce the amount of grant funding for the project for any third party income source. So that was really good. In the past, what they had done was if the project received any third party income or funding, they would take that off the top and not participate in reimbursement for that amount of money. Now once they set their funding policy, regardless of any other income into the project, they will not reduce their cost basis. So that was some really good news that came out of the MSBA board meeting on June 21st, as well as voting to move us into schematic design.
Thank you, Lynn. I just want to jump in there and thank Lynn for your work on that, and also specifically thank Rich Marlin, who's been a leader on this statewide in the conversation with the MSBA. I really appreciate, Rich, you highlighting this and your advocacy around this. It's a big deal for that. The goals of that legislation in terms of the nation's energy, but also specifically for this project to be able to allow those funds to flow directly to us. I think it's also an important reminder to us all that these rules that we run up against, that our bureaucratic partners have in place, are oftentimes made and maintained by them, and they're not immutable. So I think it's a good example of that point, and I just wanted to thank Rich for your work on that.
Thank you, Rich. Next. So that does it for the administrative update. I'll turn it over to Jean to give you a design update.
Sure. So we once again are using the same format that we've used previously, kind of I'm going to go quickly floor by floor, where we were last month compared to where we are now. And I'll say there's a few things. We've been meeting with the educational working group. We've been meeting with individual leaders within the school department. We've been taking what were large blocks, you know, that we knew the administrative suite would be this size and this is the location. And as you can see, we're actually laying out every room that's in the space program. And I have to give kudos to Steve Lamoth, our designer, because somehow within this oddly shaped building, he's got every space at the right size and with the right adjacencies and flowing well. We're starting to lay furniture into the spaces. And here you can see like locker rooms we're starting to lay out because the square footage, the right square footage is one thing, but we need to make sure that we test the square footage. Does it actually lay out and work as a classroom? So we're in the process of doing that. And we're going to be meeting with Kevin and Molly Cohen next week to go kind of room type by room type and work through the furnishings, any built-ins, and where teaching surfaces are going to go, whiteboards and marker boards and video screens. We also met with the public safety folks on Monday. Police, fire, school department was there, inspectional services. So we've been talking about how the flow of visitors to the building will work. And I'll blow this up a little bit, but the idea is that, you know, parents or guardians or others, you know, occasionally need to come into the school and meet with counselors or other staff. But you obviously want to limit those persons having access into the school proper. So we're talking about things like we have one vestibule and you get buzzed in and you can't go any further and you get credentialed with a window at the main office. And then, you know, if everything's okay, you get buzzed into the next vestibule and you can either go into the administrative suite or you can go in to see some of the counselors over here. But there's another set of doors, so you can't get into the school. That's just kind of one example of the detail that we're getting into on the plans and all the various constituencies that we're starting to talk to. You'll see that, back last month, we had the right square footage for the kitchen serving the cafeteria, and we kind of developed it into this more regular rectangle. But we had a couple of meetings with the food service director, and what was, this rectangle really didn't lay out once you start putting in all the various pieces of equipment and the serving lines. So, we're tweaking the plan. And so now the kitchen will follow this red shape instead of down in here. And that's getting into the weeds, but it's an example of how we're trying to make the plan functional and make sure that it doesn't change, because we're about to send it off to cost estimators and we want them estimating, the pieces of equipment, the big hood, and all the walls. So we want to try to nail down as much as we can right now, which we're in the process of doing. On the second floor, again, you can see that we're starting to lay out the furnishings and equipment in the various spaces to make sure that they actually work. We're starting to show where there would be folding partitions because they have cost impacts. We also, we have a guidance suite up on the second floor because there was no room on the first floor. But remember that we're able to buzz people into the main office. And I think I mentioned this last time, maybe not, but we actually have a little internal stair so that a visitor, if they have to go see a guidance counselor, can come up into the guidance suite again without having to go into the school, which just goes to making the school more secure. As we met with the educators, and we were going through the third floor plan, we had 2 of the 6th grade clusters, and we had AV and movement and health and all these other things. Kevin, I'm going to give him credit on this. Kevin Ritterhouse said, boy, it'd be nice if we had all 3 6th grade clusters on one floor, instead of having 2 on the 3rd floor and the 3rd up on the next floor. So, we've redone the plan. Again, everything is working out beautifully, but where we had 2 6th grade clusters on this floor, we now have 3. We still have the media center, the movement, the AV. We made a few changes to one of the intellectually impaired clusters, but everything is working out well that way. We also started talking about, the learning deck. It's a large space. It will probably hold, I know it'll hold more than 50 people if at least by code. And that's going to require more than just one way in and out. So we're starting to make sure we have one way and we have another way. So we've created this little, we've kind of changed this configuration in here. Up on the 4th floor, we had the 6th grade cluster, and then we had 3 7th grade. So now the 4th floor, because we brought the 6th grade cluster downstairs, is 3 clusters. So this whole floor is 7th grade. And you'll see that on the 5th floor, we have 3 clusters that are the 8th grade. So I think that the building's nicely organized right now. And as I said, we have everything where it's supposed to be in the proper size. And we're going through kind of room by room, just making sure that the shapes we're showing actually work out. The site plan has, it's a whole nother piece of the puzzle. You've seen this diagram before. This is the footprint of the new Pickering, and that's the existing Sisson and Pickering. And we have the parking, we have the drive for the new Pickering, a little bit of play field, and then we have the Sisson hard surface play area. As part of the Article 97 process, we have carved out a piece of land along Magnolia Avenue that's big enough to replace the tot lot and the basketball court that are currently there. So I think that's a very nice community feature, as well as it will enhance your application for the Article 97 transfer of land. So there have been no changes really to the circulation, the parking, the layout. And we went through this, not only the inside of the building, but we went through the site plan with the police and fire on Monday, and they seemed amenable to what we were proposing. Looks like Flory has his hands up.
Yeah, Gene, just one question here. On the blue path, can that be a double lane or just a single lane?
That is actually, it's a great question. It's important, right? It is a double wide one-way road.
Okay.
So parents can queue, on the right side. And if they drop off or pick up a child, they can pull out and still circulate out of the site.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. We actually, so we have a whole nother team that are working on the site plan. Before, we were contemplating raising this parking lot, so it was at the level, you come out of your car, you get dropped off, and you go into the school. But what that required was a lot of fill. And then it also required, because this is part of a floodplain, that we, I don't know, I'll call them tunnels, but tunnels under the fill, so that if floodwaters did come, that the water has a place to go and it's not going to go to a neighboring property. Well, one of the people in our office just sat down and he said, why don't we just leave everything where it is? And why don't we just leave the building where it is out of the floodplain, but we build a little retaining wall and we put a ramp and a stair like we did at Thurgood Marshall, which is, you know, it's not really a barrier. It's actually just part of the whole site work, and it works well. So we've run this by our civil engineer. Everything here is, like I say, kind of minimal grading. We're no longer spending a lot of money raising up the parking lot or providing the flood storage, because the flood storage essentially will be the playfield itself and the parking lots. And we feel like this is a very good cost savings solution. So we're kind of happy about that. This line here that's shaded is that MWRA water line that goes through the site. And on Friday, we have a meeting scheduled with folks from the MWRA. Our civil engineer has a very good working relationship with them. And we're just going to touch base and make sure that we understand fully any special things they're looking for so that we can incorporate those into our cost estimate. So I think we're doing I think kind of on all fronts, you know, the design is progressing very nicely. We also, I'm sorry. So Flory, remember, we had spent a lot of time and consultant money, which is well spent because we do have to work down here. But this is the area where we've moved the building. So we have completed our borings and our test pits, which will be important for designing our foundations. And we expect to start getting feedback on that early next week from those specific engineers. Then another thing we've been working on, and this relates to the Inflation Reduction Act, is that we had our HVAC and electrical engineer, a mechanical engineer, and electrical engineer. We had a couple of Zoom meetings, and they have taken the building as designed and the site as designed and the windows as we've shown them. And they've actually plugged that into some of their modeling software. And they've been doing what's called a life cycle cost analysis. We've looked at a baseline HVAC system, which is, you know, code compliant, but not really up to snuff or as good as it could be from an energy savings perspective. And then we asked them to look at 4 different options for other types of HVAC systems. And what they've done is the life cycle we've said is about 50 years before you might have to, you know, replace major components of an HVAC system. So they've looked at the first costs, they've looked at maintenance costs, they've looked at the yearly utility costs for all these different systems. And when you kind of mix those all together, you come out with, you know, which system over the life cycle is going to save the city the most money. We also, as part of that, and I'll show you, we looked at these things called displacement air systems, which provide a much higher level of indoor air quality, and I'll show you that. But they also, as part of the life cycle, so it's not only the first cost, but they looked at utility grants, which is under this Mass Save program, and they looked at the federal incentives, which are under the IRA. And going forward, when we start estimating with Consigli, I think we talked about this last time, but they have their own kind of group that specializes in helping people with grants, I believe, unless I'm misspeaking, Lynn. So I just wanted to touch base on the two different types of air distribution. This is probably what most of us are used to and are in, all the schools probably that you have, which is called a mixed air system. And if you can imagine, the ceiling has been cut away here. But fresh air is taken in at the rooftop, and then it's ducted down into the building, and the fresh air, with heated or cooled, comes in at the ceiling, and then air is drawn out. Return air is drawn out, down lower, and it goes back up to the same unit. It has pretty low maintenance costs. It does require fossil fuels. You can't do this system with an all-electric system. Not that we have selected all-electric, but that seems to be the way that the state and is kind of pushing. Most people who are concerned about the environment want to get away from the carbon emitted by fossil fuels and use renewable power to heat or cool buildings with electricity. But anyway, that's kind of what we're used to. And that's what they look like in the baseline and one of the options that they looked at. The other option is what's called displacement air distribution. And this is where we landed. We're looking at two options going forward. And that mixed ventilation, where it's coming in at the top, sometimes it's going out the top, sometimes it's going out the bottom, but all these particulates you see, everything's just kind of mixing in the air. With displacement ventilation, you bring in kind of a big quantity of fresh air low, and then as people are breathing, or computers are throwing off heat, the heat is carrying stuff up, and it's going out through the top. So you're really in the occupied zone, you're providing fresh air that's heated or cooled. And in the unoccupied zone, because everything's just kind of flowing up naturally by convection, you're taking the pollutants out, but you're also not paying as much money because you don't have to maintain the same air temperature up high in the room as you do down in the occupied part of the room. So these systems have the best air quality, very low noise, so they have the best acoustic characteristics. They're a less expensive first cost because the ductwork is much smaller. And they have lower utility costs because you're really only conditioning a portion of the room instead of you're kind of conditioning, heating or cooling this lower portion as opposed to the whole volume of air. And this could be fossil fuel, or it could be all electric, the way this works. We're not going to go through every cell in this, but it's an example of what comes out of the model for this life cycle cost analysis. And what they did is the code baseline, and then they compared the four options, and they looked at the first cost, they looked at the incentives, they looked at the annual electric cost, gas cost, maintenance cost on an annual basis, replacement costs for equipment at various milestones. And at the end, they came down and they calculate either paybacks for the investment, or how many years, well, how much you might save over 50 years. And then even though this one has a higher first cost, anyway, the payback to make it even is 13 years in this case. That's using the mass save, which is the utility company incentives. And we figured that it would be about $1.3 million savings over a 50-year period, which is not a tremendous amount when you do the math. And it makes use of about $300,000 in grants from the utility companies. So that's that. But then they looked at including the IRA tax credits. And that bumps things up to a $7.7 million life cycle because there are bigger grants available. And, you know, for the geothermal system, for instance, you might have a grant of $5.2 million. Now, the geothermal, you know, first cost is more expensive, but this more than makes up for it. And the payback, should you get this tax credit, is instant. You know, any money you've put in, you're going to save immediately on day one.
But Gene, there's a high operation cost that's associated to that, right?
Actually, on the life cycle for a geothermal system, the combined utility cost is projected at $241,000. So it's actually lower than an air source heat pump or for some of these other systems, Flory. And then I do know with the geothermal that it has lower equipment replacement costs over time.
All right.
So where we landed on this was we were going to base the cost estimate on this option 3, which is a heat pump system, but it doesn't make use of wells in the ground. It uses the air as the source for the heat pump. And so all the equipment would be up on the roof. There might be a chiller on the ground. It kind of has an instant payback, and we are, I guess we'll say, sure that this mass save incentive is solid. So we said we're gonna price the job out this way, and you can see without the federal grant, it's a 13-year payback to do the more efficient well field for the geothermal. But we're setting it up so that if you are successful in getting that geothermal tax credit, which again, then this is the lowest cost on an annual basis and on a 50-year basis, then we can kind of easily convert to the geothermal. And I just threw a whole bunch of words at you, but it kind of ties into the federal credit, and it also gives you a sense for what we're thinking as far as a HVAC system. And then Steve Watchorn is just gonna, if he's still here, yeah, you are. Just give you a quick update on, you know, this whole land swap and the MEPA permitting.
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick rundown. There's not too much to report since the last time we met. We had a slide very similar to this, so that's a good thing. We're marching along the way and taking the steps that we need to take to dispose of the property as parkland. We found, if you recall, additional parkland space over on Parkland Ave that we'd be replacing the Parkland Ave. These two parcels, parcel 5 and parcel 34, would become property of the school department. And the plan is that the two parcels, one of which Gene showed you previously, that was highlighted in yellow in a previous slide on the bottom of the screen here, sort of dashed in blue and in white, yep, where Gene has his cursor. That's roughly 0.35 acres. That's going to, at the end of the conclusion of this project, be returned as a community playground. And then over on the left-hand side, where the ball field is, that also would be returned as well. So only a portion of parcel 5 and then parcel 34 would are necessary as part of the school project. So we
go ahead, see. Yep.
We do have meetings scheduled next week with the Conservation Commission and Park Commission for their votes in the process. I believe also next month, the City Council will be meeting for some takings that are required, which is a logistical step that they just need to take on parcel 34. That's number 2 on the slide, and something that has already happened, which is just acceptance of the roadway. It's an acceptance of the as-built conditions, and that happened a couple weeks ago.
And then Lynn, we're gearing up for the environmental justice community meetings, right?
Yes, we are. We'll talk about the 2 meetings that we have planned for that back when we talk about the SBC meeting schedule.
Great. And looks like Karen has her hand up.
Yes, thanks. I just wanted some clarification on parcel 5, specifically where the Rhinefest ball field is concerned. I just want to understand how, if at all, this project will affect the local Little League that uses that field from April to June through, April to July throughout the course of this project.
I will say this is well out of the construction area, right? And I don't know the specifics, maybe Lynn or Steve do. I know there's some various actions that are being taken, but the intention is that this Little League park ends up, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but back under the control of the Little League.
Actually, we're taking the whole parcel only because it's a much more expedient process
This
than
one.
trying to subdivide parcel 5. We don't plan to touch the Little League field or change its use in any way throughout the construction process. And as soon as we are done with the construction process, then we will turn that 1.3 acre parcel or portion of parcel 5, we'll turn it back over to the Parks Commission and in the custody of the Little League. So it's just a procedural reason why we're taking the whole parcel as opposed to trying to go through the process of subdividing it first prior to, and we have more time to get that subdivision taken care of. Right now we need to get this land swap done so that we can get the construction going.
Right. So you don't anticipate, so let's say 2026 when that gets returned to the park service, like you said. So you don't anticipate play on that field to be jeopardized.
No, we don't expect it to change in any way.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it's not going to be part of the construction fence. It's going to be outside the construction fence. So.
Right. Okay.
Looks like Tom Mannion has his hand up.
Yeah, Lynn, have you been in touch with the Little League? I'm a former president of that Little League. Have you been in touch with the Little League to let them know what's going on, the president and their board?
No, we haven't, and we should do that. We've just been working to try to put packets together, which we just completed at the end of last week, and we're sharing with the Parks Commission and the Conservation Commission. But now that we've gotten that piece taken care of, we'll reach out. We also need to reach out to some of the butters. I know that some of the school building, I think Lorraine Gately and I can't remember who else.
Brian Castellanos.
Oh, Brian. Yeah, Brian. They were canvassing the neighborhood and reaching out to abutters and stuff. So we do have some more work to do on that, and we will do that.
Also, it
was Rick Stobbit.
Yes. Yeah, I knew there were several people.
Yeah,
So thank you.
there were a lot.
Do you want me to go to the next slide, Lynn?
Yes. Unless there's any more questions. Okay, go ahead. Next slide. So this brings us to a slew of meetings and activities that we have coming up in the next month. We are looking to have a July 26th meeting this month. At that meeting, we'll kind of finalize the design and the site layout. At that point, we'll be well into the estimating process. We also want to pair this meeting with a environmental justice outreach community meeting. So I would expect we'd have a quick, short SBC meeting, much like we did when we had the community meeting for the PSR submission. We'll have a quick SBC meeting prior to I believe it's at, did we do 6:30 and then at 7 we had the community meeting, or maybe it was a little earlier, 6 and 6:30, but we'll be finalizing that in the next couple of days and trying to get translations done of the meeting flyers and get translators lined up. But this is part of the MEP process that we have to go through. They have a new component of their compliance program, and it is called the environmental justice component. And it means that they have a mapping of the state that shows the pockets of environmental injustice, and we need to make sure that we involve the entire community in any decisions that we make to open space. So we will be doing that. Our first one will be on the 26th. We also have a meeting scheduled for August 16th to approve to review and approve costs. We'll get the cost reconciliation spreadsheets out to everyone in advance of this meeting. But at this meeting, we'll be looking to approve cost of the project in advance of the schematic design submission. MSBA requires that we submit the budget 2 weeks in advance of the schematic design submission. So that we will be looking for approval. If it's approved on the 16th, we will submit the budget piece of the schematic design submission to the MSBA on August 17th. At that point, we'll have enough information to complete our draft of the schematic design, and we'll submit that to the SBC on the 23rd. And we would be looking for on the 23rd for that to be SBC meeting as well, where we have a joint environmental justice outreach community meeting as well. And then on the 30th of August, we'll be asking the SBC to meet to approve submission of the schematic design. If approved, we'll submit it on August 31st to the MSBA. That's the deadline for submitting in order to make it onto the agenda of the MSBA Board of Directors meeting on October 25th. So there were two date changes on the calendar that went out to everybody previously and that we'd been following. In addition to adding the two dates shown here for July and August in this pink color, we changed the August 8th meeting to August 16th, and we changed the December 20th meeting to December 13th. Moved it up a little. So that's where we are with the meetings and some of the actions that we need to take over the next couple of months in order to stay on track with the schematic design submission schedule. Does anybody have any questions? If not, I think this is again just a quick overview of the schedule where we're keeping the process going in the attempt of making a September 2026 school opening date, and that's the date that we are working toward, and why some of these processes are moving quickly in order to maintain that opening date. That's all I have for tonight. So if anybody has any other business or any questions, comments, or discussions, open for that now.
I'll just add on the time. I know I said this last time, but just to reiterate, we are continuing to talk to the various state agencies about the financing, and if we don't have the funding plan lined up in a way that's going to work, then we're going to need more time to do that and to continue to value engineer the project, which is part of the whole point of doing the CM at risk and getting someone like that on board. So just want to flag that we're doing everything we can to meet this timeline, because we want that school to open. But I want to just remind folks that that's happening as well, those conversations.
Right.
Quick question, Amir. So say we have to delay this, what is the timeline where we can continue moving forward, but we're working on the value as you just talked about? So if we don't meet the deadline, it doesn't mean it just means you got to extend it out. Is that what would happen?
Right. We would hopefully be ready, but for the next submission point, which is October, for the December board meeting. But then that would shift, that timeline that Lynn just showed to end result of January 27 opening rather than a September 26 opening.
Thank you.
And believe me, I would much rather it be September of 2026, and we are communicating that in no uncertain terms to our partners.
But we also need to be able to pay for it.
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, to the extent that folks are interested in what the legislature is doing about this, there are some solutions in the legislature, but they would need to pass in the summer and get signed by the governor, and then the MSBA would need to be able to implement them. And unless we get certain assurances from the MSBA, those could go through, and then we would not benefit from them if we've already signed our project funding agreement. And there's also solutions that are pending in the legislature that would be targeted at this issue, but would leave us out because we haven't signed the funding agreement yet. So it's a really fluid conversation about how to get this all to work. And I think from the city's perspective, this is absolutely the top priority to address what is really, millions and millions of dollars of capital needs across a lot of different areas. But this is the one that we have all rallied around to be really the hallmark of the next step of the city's maintenance of our physical infrastructure. And we're incredibly committed to getting that done. But if we aren't setting ourselves up for success on the financing, it's gonna jeopardize the project if we're not starting from a point where we can afford it.
And I know the mayor's been working hard on all fronts to try to make sure that the city gets every advantage they can in terms of additional funding.
A lot of hard work's gone into this. Good work from the mayor, from the delegation, trying to, this has been a priority for a long time and make tremendous progress. Hopefully the legislature and the challenges that not only Lynn faces on this issue, it's been an ongoing issue on the way the costs have gone up substantially. No reflection of the work done on the committee or on the city, but it's reflective of a challenge in the way the funding has worked. So the tremendous work's gone into this, and I know everyone's working really hard to make it make it happen. And hopefully those pieces that you've been working on, Mayor Nicholson with the delegation, will be able to come together and continue to move this forward. So I just want to recognize that, but it's good that you bring up the challenge that we face as well to understand that.
Thank you.
Lorraine?
I also wanted to make a mention that Mayor McGee started a plan and Mayor Nicholson followed through with this plan. And it was the MSBA that changed the percentage. Am I right, Mayor?
The MSBA, by not increasing the rates, resulted in the percentage changing. So costs went up, but the rates didn't come up, commensurate with the costs.
I just wanted that to be clear because I feel that as though the city has done everything it could to align itself so that the school would be funded and it would go through fairly smoothly. But then things happened and it's, we need to really fight to get some more monies in the city because across the state of Massachusetts, it's not equitable. And other communities surrounding us are getting new schools and they have a higher tax base and we just cannot get there. So that's the frustration that I'm feeling. And I just can't believe what's happening. Sorry, Mayor.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, I think that we've talked about this. The fundamental inequity here is that we're in the statute an 80% community, meaning we're eligible for up to 80% reimbursement. The effective reimbursement rate has been in the 40s. If we'd be in the 60s like we were for the Marshall Middle School, we wouldn't be having any of this conversation. And so that's exactly right. And you know, I also agree with what Mayor McGee said that the pressures on the costs are not unique to this project. It's happening across the country and showing up in all the projects around the state as well. So it's a real issue. I know that the people that we're talking to at the different state agencies, and we're knocking on a lot of different doors. Everyone we talk to, I think it's fair to say that we've made them aware of the issue. And we are really pushing to get the right solution so that we can make this really important project a reality. And you know, I feel comfortable saying that thanks to the work of this group, our project team, the school building committee, all our partners, we've figured out a great site. We have an incredible design. We just need to lock down the funding plan.
Okay,
All right. Any other comments?
that's your wrap.
Motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye,
Bye.
Bye.
Aye.
Bye.
everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.